Welcome to The InEVitable, a podcast by MotorTrend. Inspired by the future, designed for the now.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The InEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast, our podcast about the future of transportation, the future of the automobile, the future of electric SUVs with throwback nameplates. That's right, this week we have the CEO of Scout, Scott Keogh.
What is a Scout?
What is a Scout?
You profess to be some kind of expert.
Yes, well, back after college, when I was living in San Francisco, my buddy Dylan had a whole bunch of Scouts, and we would just constantly rebuild them. And he even had, it was the coolest one. It wound up being named Grandpa, but it was he had a 1961 original Scout with the 4-cylinder, which was just a 302 sliced in half. So it was a 151 cubic inch 4-cylinder on like an 8,000 pound truck. Its top speed downhill, 59 miles an hour, maybe. So
still haven't explained what a Scout is.
Yeah,
but okay,
it's an SUV. It's an
okay.
SUV, little SUV. Everyone knows what a Scout is.
A Scout, if you're not one of those people who knows what a Scout is, it looks kind of like a Bronco, like the old school, the original Bronco.
But narrower, built by International. So
International Harvester.
Yeah,
right?
the engines will go a million miles. Everything was so overbuilt.
Square body, round headlights, super heavy duty.
Yeah, like it was like a semi-truck transmission almost. I mean, that was the I was going to say was before Ed so rudely cut me off was we found a 68 frame engine and transmission, and so the 68 was actually a V8, and we did some pretty sawzally surgery on the thing, and it then was very fast, and it became known as Grandpa. But like that, I just remember the size of that transmission. I've never seen a passenger vehicle with a transmission that gnarly. It was just massive. Like the body, the steel of the tiny little body weighed. We had 7 guys. We were trying to take it off. We had to go rent a cherry picker, but we had 7 guys trying to pick it up. Couldn't even budget.
Right.
Just super overbuilt. Cool little old school off-roaders, which are coming back as electrified subgroup of the Volkswagen brand.
Yes. So VW AG apparently bought the rights to start remanufacturing vehicles under the Scout name. This all happened quite recently. And the executive selected to lead this effort is a gentleman by the name of Scott Keogh, who we have on the podcast today. And he's an
old friend of ours.
He's a longtime VW of America executive. He ran that brand for, I think, something like 8 years. Before
Audi.
That, worked at Audi, worked at Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, that's going way back, yeah.
He actually he started off in marketing communications, essentially like a PR guy.
Yeah.
And now is running, arguably, I would say, one of the most interesting new brands in the automotive industry. Certainly a lot of questions around it and what VW Group is doing, as we'll get into, because they obviously have a whole family of brands internationally, and they've done a lot of different stuff. They have tried big SUVs. They tried the Amarok pickup truck that was supposed to take out the Hilux globally. They just did a deal with Rivian for software for electrified vehicles. So there's a lot of like, what's going on?
Why do you need
Scout?
another brand if you already have all those brands? Why do you need a new brand? But we'll find out.
We'll find out
Yeah.
in our conversation with Scott Keogh. And I think one of the things we are going to talk a lot about, which we want to just give you a heads up on, is EREVs, which are electric range extended vehicles. Electric range extended vehicles. Yes, sorry. EREVs.
So long story short, what that means is there is a gas engine. It is never connected to the driven wheels. All it does is create energy that can go into the battery, and so it just extends the range of the EV itself.
And you're like, oh, it sounds like a hybrid. It is a hybrid.
It's a type of hybrid.
It's a type of hybrid. But again, to Johnny's point, the fundamental driving characteristic, though, is that it's still an EV. So it drives like an EV. It accelerates like an EV. If you floor it, it will just go until it stops going. You'll never hear the motor kick on like you will in some hybrids to power the wheels.
Yeah, if it's fully charged, the engine just stays off.
Yeah. So
not even fully charged. If it's just any charge, once it gets below a certain threshold, the engine kicks on, and the engine probably just runs at steady state. It probably runs at like, I'm making this up because the car doesn't exist yet, but like 4,000 RPM, and that's just a good power band to generate electricity.
And there's no other accessories on there. There's no heat pumps.
No
there's
air
yeah,
conditioning,
nothing.
nothing
Just
like that.
it literally theoretically powers the battery, and from a sort of packaging and platform perspective, you can generally think of hybrids as having a smaller battery, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, because they're more reliant on the gasoline powertrain. And then an EREV is going to have a comparatively larger battery, but not as large as a full battery electric, but it'll have a large battery.
Well, we hang on real quick though. We don't actually know that with Scout.
Yeah. I'm just talking about EREVs in general.
In general, so like just talking in terms of like a lithium ion battery. So like a hybrid would have like a 1 kilowatt hour battery. A plug-in hybrid, you'd be talking like a 30 kilowatt hour battery, and then an EREV, you'd be like 60 or above, generally speaking. And that'll give you like a couple hundred miles of electric range with the EREV, and then. So Scout, what they've said is they're going to have 350 miles of EV, or with the EREV, 500 miles. So it gives you a little bit more range.
And sorry, the setup is when Scout was announced that it was coming back, the initial read was it's going to be battery electric. They might have said electrified, but everybody read that as Scout's coming back EV only. And then at their launch event, when they showed off their truck and their SUV, the wait one more thing, or the surprise announcement was, oh, we're adding EREVs.
Mm-hmm.
We're adding a range
yeah.
extender, which, to be honest, everybody in the industry seems to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It started with Stellantis with the Ram Charger when they announced that Ram was late to the game with an full electric pickup truck, so they have the Ram Charger coming. Sorry, they have the Ram Rev coming. That's the battery electric.
Yep.
And then the Ram Charger is the EREV version of that. And that was kind of a big deal because for big trucks and SUVs, EREVs theoretically handle a lot of the common concerns about battery electric vehicles.
Yeah, towing.
Towing primarily.
Also cold weather, you're just constantly generating electricity.
And you can, if you're towing with EREV, you don't have to, you can charge it, like pull up to a charger if you got it, or you can just go fill up at a gas station and keep going. So it seems to be a good half step or whatever.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to ask Scott, because I've heard that 80% of the deposits of the Scouts are for the EREV version. So it'll be interesting if that's actually true. Right. So a lot to talk about with this guy, because it's a cool brand to come back, and also solid designs. Like the designs were very, very newsy. A lot of people talked about them, including us, because they look great.
Yeah.
So
without further ado, Scott Keogh, head of Scout Motors. Ready?
Hi, Scott.
Johnny, how are you, man?
I'm good.
Thanks
Good
for
to see you.
coming.
It's been a long time. Thanks,
It
Ed.
has
Good to see you
been a long
guys.
time.
Yes. And let's just jump right in.
Yeah, Scout.
There's no other way. Big time.
Give us the pitch. What's going on with
Yeah,
Scout?
why, how, you are, as we said in the intro, you're a veteran of the automotive industry. You had a pretty sweet gig at EREV
your
America.
last title was
Lots of sweet gigs.
Was,
Let's see. President of Volkswagen Group of America
Yeah.
and North American region.
Why-
that's a pretty big title.
Why?
Yeah, that's a big one. This one's smaller.
Why? Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why jump and start a new car company, car brand?
First of all, this is like the best job in the automotive business. Absolutely love it because you get to, one, restore an American icon, two, launch an all-new car company, three, have the backing of parents and adults that know what they're doing. And so you have this clean sheet married to an icon, married to a trusted, automotive company that can get things done and ramp up and get good material costs. The combination is perfect. The other reason I love it is I think the timing is exactly right. It's like you always want to sort of meet the market and meet the moment, and the market is screaming for okay, let's build things again in America. Let's do things again. Let's start with a clean sheet. So I love it. I think it's perfect. And Scout's an iconic brand. I love bringing it back.
Let's get into the timings. It's interesting. Yeah. Meet the market. So what about an electric sport utility vehicle and pickup truck is meeting the market?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First, if you look at it, I think there is a market for electrification to fight all of the, let's say, noise. And I'm sure we'll get into the noise that's out there. I think the technology is great. I think it's all sorts of opportunities there. I think just as important, as you know, is we're launching with a range extender. And I think if you look at the reaction to the range extender, it's been a home run. Why is it a home run in my mind? I think it's doing two things really well. It gets a more traditional ICE crowd to drop their guard and say, it's got gas? Cool. And they're in. And then actually what all the research is telling us is people who love EVs say, it's not the worst thing in the world to have a backup generator, just use that term for now, a gas generator on the vehicle. So it totally opens the market. So I think that's a home run move. And then I think why now? I think building things in America, I think the factory in South Carolina, I think there's a lot of nostalgia to do things and bring things back. I think there's a lot of love for the Scout brand. You marry that with a range extender, electrification. The other reason, not to go into super details, but I think what it does is it gives you a technology that now, whatever the market hands our way over the next, let's say, 20, 30 years, from a manufacturing perspective and a platform perspective, we could do it. Let's say the market says 100% BEV in 3 years. On the factory line, super easy to execute. Platform's exactly the same. Let's say it's the converse of that. We're ready. So if you look at where the market's heading, I don't think electrification's going to 0. I think it's at 10 now, and I think it's going to go to 20 and 25. Then you add a range extender. I think it tools you into 50, 60% of the market easily. Perfect. And so that's what the reactions has been. As you guys know, we showed the car in Tennessee in October, and it continues to be the reaction. So that's why, my read.
So that's great. But you announced Scout, you joined Scout in 2020.
Yep, September of 22, exactly right.
And at the time, what was the statement all electric, battery electric, or did you guys kind of waffle with electrification? Like when did EREV become part of the
EREV,
combination?
I would say one, it was always in our minds, let's put it back burner, because you have to think of at the time. And let's forget the consumer world.
Right.
Let's focus on like what's America world. So ZEV mandates, which is basically the CARB states, let's say it's 50% of the car market.
Zero emission vehicles. That
Right. So yeah, zero emission vehicles, and still on the record is 100% by 2035.
For 12 states.
Yeah, but that's like 42% of the
Right.
sales. So
Right.
it's a big
Yeah.
operation. Then you even go to federal EPA, and that had the curve, as you guys know quite well, but that was taking you to like 60, 70% penetration by 2035.
Right.
So certainly you had to get in the game or you weren't going to be in this market at all. So 100%, it did start with 100% battery electric vehicle. That's what we announced when September of 22, we announced our intentions. But I think we always had our eye on this possibility. When did we put it from the back burner to front burner? I would say 9 months ago. But actually, it speaks to working inside a small company. We have our engineering center in Novi, just outside of Detroit. We started spitballing the ideas. We have a early phase concept team, small group of engineers. They put some ideas on the table. Instantly, they went to the market and they said, okay, here's the 4 to 5 ways we could apply it, right? How do we fit that within our package? And then within 2 to 3 months, we had 80% of the concept down. And then now what we're doing is refining, right? Getting the cost, targeting down, making sure the package fits, make sure it can crash, make sure you can homologate, all those kind of things. So that, to me, speaks to the company. Try doing something like that inside a big, giant machine that says, hey, we have our planning round, we have our fixed plan, we're not pivoting, we're not moving. So actually, I think that's something to celebrate, not something like, oh, wait, you changed the plans a little bit? Yeah.
What do you lose though? Because when you go from pure electric to having a range extender, you got to fit an engine, you got to fit a gas tank, you got to have exhaust piping suddenly, some way.
Significantly less, but yeah.
Yeah. So without, I know you can't give specifics, but like what your pure EV looked like has to be different than anything that can take a range extender. So what
So
do you
let me
lose?
break it into big categories. So big package elements, and I'll say things like gradability, ground clearance, interior, frunk, package, seating, all that type of stuff, you basically lose nothing. Because you look at how we're able to do the car, we're able to put the engine just off the rear axle. You have a smaller battery, so that chemistry gets smaller and the battery pack gets smaller. And then
Can I pause there?
former pack, the gas tank goes. But anyway, then we'll jump in.
So
Yeah.
have you announced how much smaller the battery is going to be yet?
We haven't, but it's smaller. It's a smaller pack. So let's say the big, BEV battery would be in the 120s, 130s, somewhere in there. And then this one would probably be in the 60s, 70s. Let's put it loosely like that. So let's say half-ish the size. The potential also use different chemistry, but these are all things we're looking at. So big package, I would say you lose nothing. Then you come down to the pure performance. The pure performance, 0 to 60 time of the battery will be quicker. Definitely, no debate. One would probably be, let's say, 0 to 60, 3.5. Maybe the other one would be 4.5, somewhere in there. So
And
you're not
this-
talking,
This is because like the voltage goes down.
the chemistry would
Okay.
probably be chemistry that can handle all that versus a less expensive chemistry on the,
Okay.
would be on the other one. So it's long out, because the other architecture elements are staying the same. We'll keep the same drive units for the most part in the thing. It'll be 800 volts, all of that would stay the same. So that's basically what you're going to lose. What you're going to gain, depending how you look at it, is the anticipated range of the BEV is 300, battery electric vehicle is 350 miles. The anticipated combined of the range extender is 500 miles. That's about approximately 150 coming from the battery itself, and then the other 350 coming from the tank, working together to be 500. And again, these are all where we are in the concept, but
Gotcha.
they'll
Yeah.
be in the zone of that. So that's what you lose. You lose a little bit of performance, and then the range dynamics are different. If I look at things on the big picture, towing and payload and things like that, you're not losing that much. It's 2,000 payload on both of them. Towing, there might be a little swing, but it's not massive.
But then you get the advantage of towing with a range extender versus pure electric towing.
Bingo. And that's one of the key things we wanted to do with the vehicle. Obviously, you can drive it in whatever mode you want, but the big three we're focused on is, let's say, one, I want to drive this vehicle pure electric. There's a lot of people who want to do that. 150 miles, you can do a lot pure electric.
That's your day. Yeah.
And then there's more hybrid mode, which is, let's say, let's optimize. Sorry, I lose my language here. Long day.
it's all right.
Optimize this so you can get as much range as possible. And the other one is going to go heavier on the engine, max the engine up a little bit for towing and more heavier duty type of stuff. But we also want to make sure we keep this thing simple. But those would be the three big zones we want to cover really well, because we think there's a market for all three of those and all three of those driving conditions.
Can I go back? Did you break news here by disclosing the position of the engine, or have you already mentioned that it's going to be in the back?
We've mentioned that before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and is that's interesting. I think it removes some piping for exhaust. But is there a cooling concern? Because then
You've hit the exact issue. We have a cool solution, not to get into details, but exactly. You obviously at that less distance, you need to get some cooling in there. It's a tricky place to get it, but we've got a good smart solution to do it, not to get into
Yeah,
details.
Formula One snorkel. I'm thinking like we're on the top.
But so rear engine, is it, I mean, I'm just thinking on the pickup, like it's under the bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Where you might find,
Yep.
say, a full size spare. Maybe.
Those they tend to wind up in those locations.
Okay.
on both of them, actually, by the way.
Have you, let me, is
All right, but
the-
I want to make sure we get back to why Scout and the big picture stuff. You guys
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you're
Oh,
going,
yeah.
you're going down
right.
the rabbit
We're
hole
done.
of spare
We're done.
tires. You promised me. All right, all good.
We got a whole thing on. I got a whole line
Right,
of questions on
So,
EREV that we jump right into.
it's just,
All right,
it's
stick
just
to
fa-
EREV. We're good, but that's, I want to make sure we get back to
it's just fast because I've heard that people are putting orders down, and I've heard it's been like overwhelmingly maybe to Scout's surprise, or maybe not to EREVs have been what the deposits are for.
Yeah,
Is that true?
I think if you look at it directionally, what we're seeing is 70% for the Traveler, which is the SUV, and about 30% for the Terra, which is the pickup truck, about what we expected. And then I would say the majority is leaning towards, so over 50% is what
Yeah,
I'll say is
okay,
leaning towards
okay.
the Harvester, the range extender. That's not surprising us, particularly. I think what is great when you're looking at the states, or the demographic of states and locations, it's telling us we got a 50-state car in our hands, as opposed to, most electric vehicles the preponderance of sales seem to come heavy from where we are here in
Yeah.
California, and you see in places here, we're seeing it in Wisconsin's and Minnesota and,
Okay.
and the hearts. And I think that was always a critical thing for us, right? If you wanted to be a Scout and the type of vehicle that we're making, we wanted to make sure it was a 50-state car. And I think that's exactly what this technology is doing. But the more important thing on the technology, honestly, is it's dropped the guard of a big chunk of the market that says, I won't even talk about it. We can
Yes.
talk about electrification. You drop the guard, and then you start to talk about what this vehicle can do.
Right.
And then the conversation is not electric range extender. It's like, what are its capabilities? And we start talking capabilities, and you're like, damn, this thing's cool. And the other thing which is smart is it introduces electrification in a very cool way, because you're gonna, the car will be driven off of the batteries. Both of the axles will be driven from the battery. The engine is being used as a generator, as a charger. And so I think you can introduce a quiet ride. You can introduce crazy torque. You can introduce charging at home and not going to a gas stand, all these things. Yet, you don't have the insane panic attacks that says, okay, where's the charger? Where's everything's going on? So there's, my mind, a ton of benefits.
So,
and we've seen it firsthand.
so that decision then 9 months ago to go EREV, did you go, first of all, you went from Scout's going to be all electric and the announcement, and then you said, okay, it looks like, and this is something we've dealt with on this podcast, is like, we have to walk through this valley of hybridization. Is it fair to say you also evaluated, okay, well, I guess we could do a hybrid, I guess we could do a plug-in hybrid, and then there's this thing called EREVs that everyone's talking about. Did you guys jump straight to EREV?
We had, it was classic funnel work just that you laid out. So we looked at the funnel and we saw what was happening in the market. We saw the political dynamics. We saw the market dynamics. We saw the chemistry dynamics, a lot of dynamics. And you guys know them all as well as I do. And then we looked at different options.
Right.
And then from those options, this was by far the best one.
But,
and the other thing that was critical to us, because if I take a look at the, like, what we wanted to achieve, number one, we wanted to make sure we kept the vehicle a Scout. And by that, we kept all of the great ability, all the ruggedness, all the off-roading. So the thing's a Scout, which regardless of what version you get. So it's not like it's a front-wheel drive and it's out there, whatever it's doing. It's like, no, it's a Scout. Mm-hmm. The second thing, we wanted to maintain the integrity of an electric vehicle, including the frunk, the packaging, all things you come to expect. And then the third one, which is great, we've got the solution that works to both sides on the equation, from an electric to a gas. So this by far was the best solution. And then the final piece of the puzzle is how well it works on the platform and in the factory level, because basically you're able to run it down the exact same line. You got a jet operation for the tank, a jet operation for the engine, and so that allows you ultimate flexibility. What kills you, of course, if you have to change the plant, modify, or even worse, you have to say, all right, here's exactly our mix and exactly our penetrations. Here you have that fluidness. So I think that's the other solution, why we loved it. And you're not messing with the frunk, you're not messing with a lot of things. You talked about cooling, on and on. So I think it works well. It's a really good solution.
Have you guys announced, I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be a Volkswagen Group product, but like what this engine is?
We haven't. I think you two could probably put your finger on it if you did a fair amount of analysis. But I think, look, I think there's good, high output, 4-cylinder, small engines that package well, that are industrialized in the region, so they're already localized or can be easily localized. And then, of course, you want one that can meet homologation, right? You still want a SULEV 20 engine. So you put all that together and you come up with a list, and it's not, there's not 4,000 engines out there that can achieve that task.
I can probably guess this.
We love the fact of, I think that's one of the great advantages of one, we could pivot on a piece of paper very easily. We could make the platform, we can make everything work, but then you got to find the components, and then that's where the group is just fantastic, because one thing to find an engine, another one homologated, industrialized, right? Because we want to get as much from the region, considering tariffs and everything else that's going on. So, yes, we do have it, and we have to tweak it because we want to optimize it 100% for the task.
It's doing something different.
Exactly.
It's going to probably, I mean, again, I don't know that much about EREVs, but they tend to run at a steady state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can simplify a lot of things.
Right.
Turbos and everything else you don't need.
You don't need air conditioning and blah, 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 blah.
Bingo.
Do you expect the owners of the harvesters, the EREVs, to be plugging the vehicles in to charge? Like, here's one of the common narratives for automotive journalists, because we have access to limited OEM information. Here
I am. Speaking my heart out at a table here in California, and you get no information.
Look, that no plug-in hybrid, the manufacturers of plug-in hybrids, they don't have any data on how much the owners actually plug them in. Like, do you have any expectation that your owners are going to basically just fill them up with gas and have the motor generate electricity, or that they're actually going to plug in their EREVs and charge at home or charge at location? Because they'll have that duality, they'll have that ability.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think it's certainly not an ideal. Let's use the example of reversed of what you're going to is basically, okay, we've got this small-ish engine dragging around a heavy uncharged battery a day, carrying more weight, less efficiency, a significantly less than ideal situation. So I think, that's not the goal.
Okay.
I think that data, you got to believe, with all of the upgradability and updates are out there, I'm certain it's out there. Whether it's provided is a whole other story. What do we anticipate? I think we anticipate a big-time combination. But one thing to be clear, the car runs on the battery as opposed to the car runs on the engine that front. Now, to your point, how do you get that battery charged? There's all sorts of ways of doing it, right? You could use the engine and the tank, the gas to go do it. You can also do it with charging. I anticipate a fair amount of people who have a driveway and have a garage will be charging the vehicle at home, full stop. I think that's not the issue with electrification. I think the big issue with electrification is what you do when you're out there on the road and you do have these trips. Because we see most Americans focus on, they don't focus on the 95% when everything's fine.
Right.
They focus on the 5% when things went to holy heck.
Once
and
a
then
year,
boom.
Once a year, with your 2 weeks of time off you get from work, you have to visit the in-laws.
Yeah.
And that's what you worry about. Even though, like you said, 95% of the time you do A to B, A to B, A to B.
Yeah. Or you're hearing from the press, by the way, all of the horror stories out there, which says, I drove by and there was 5 stations and 2 of the stations weren't working. The other 2 had 15 cars out of them.
I'm one of the biggest.
Way you go.
I'm one of the biggest loudmouths about that.
Yeah. And by the way, it's real as well.
Yeah.
It's
just unbelievable. But I think what Ed was getting at is that we have this stereotype of, like, just to pick on it, like the Wrangler, the 4xe, where it has, it's like the original version was like 17 miles of electric range. Like, why plug it in at the end of the day,
Yeah.
And I think that was maybe a bit of greenwashing, not to pick on them. Whereas this is a different proposition where if you're going to have, even if it's, you said maybe 60 to 70 kilowatt hour battery, that's a lot to drag around empty to expect a small 4-cylinder to charge.
And it's 150 miles, not 17 miles.
Yes.
So this is intended to be authentic, credible electric driving, big time, without a doubt. And by the way, there's a lot of good things that have come of that, like massive torque and performance.
Sure.
Where you guys know all the stories, so
Sure.
Quiet riding and on and on.
Yeah.
But it's a good question. How do we anticipate? But even going to the charging stations now, that's not where the heavy lifting is coming. Most of the heavy lifting is coming from home and the garage and things like that. So I think that's where we anticipate the battery side of it coming, and then the gas speaks for itself.
Okay.
But again, I think what we're talking about here is putting it as a philosophical or mental thing. It's not the way to go, but it's you've got to get over this hump, and I think this is a super smart technology that does that.
Yes. I mean, I run into this all the time. Where, like, well, don't EVs just catch on fire? They don't work in the cold? Like, all these things, aren't they slow?
Yeah.
It's like no.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a few times, and we're always very curious about it. And I think a lot of the questions that it's going to ask you that we got from internal MotorTrend people are going to be about this. But can you explain the relationship with Volkswagen? Because it's like not a Volkswagen brand, but it is a Volkswagen brand. You're autonomous, but you're not. It's like we don't know.
We've said it 100 times. You guys like half listen. I think.
Okay.
Is basically
it's
true.
Because we've had people say things where they're not always true 100 times. So.
Okay.
All right. So first and foremost,
Yeah.
100%, Scout Motors is part of the Volkswagen Group. The Volkswagen Group, as you know as well as anyone, holds a whole host of brands from Skoda to Bentley to Porsche to Audi and other thing.
Ducati.
And we are one of those brands. Our reporting line is from here in the States. Scout Motors is a LLC, and it reports into the Volkswagen Group directly in Germany. So for me, for
Straight
example,
to
report into the board. We have board meetings there. We give them updates. Away we go. They are the sole provider, funder of the company as of right now, but we've structured the company in a way, if we want to seek strategic partners with someone else, if we want to seek outside capital, if potentially we want to go public, the company's been structured to do that. So I think it gives us the runway and the ability to go do that.
Like Porsche's relationship with the group, where they have their own investment department. They bought whatever it was, 50-some% of Rimac, and that whole thing.
Right,
Like
and obviously they're that, but they're obviously way further along, way more advanced.
Yes.
Of course.
But they're
longer
sort
history.
of more. No, I don't even know how it works, but not more independent. But they do show a lot of independence within the group.
Yeah, but I think where the confusion comes is people mix Volkswagen Group with the Volkswagen brand.
Yes.
Volkswagen brand is a brand that sells great cars and does all the things that you guys know. We are one of the brands of the Volkswagen Group.
Yes.
Full stop. They fund it. They strategically made the decision to investment. And, the reason they did that, just go back to the beginning, is look, where all this started is the group took a look at the world. And I think when they looked at the world, it's proving more true now than it did 2.5, 3 years ago when they were starting to look at it. China, 20% market share for the group. Very, very competitive market. No story there. Europe, the group has 22-ish points of market share. Europe's flattening a bit, I think, as you all know there. And then look, if you want to get a growth opportunity, the group has 4 points of share and change here between Porsche, between Audi and Volkswagen. So that said, what do we do? And of course, keep improving with those brands, keep investing in those brands, keep making them happen. But America is simple. The segments that Scouts compete in is 40% of the profit pools. Those two vehicles where 40% of the profits are, it's 30-something% of the volume. And overwhelmingly, it's dominated by a Buy American mentality, American brands that do it.
Nobody wants a full-size Volkswagen pickup truck.
You can look at it, but
Yeah.
this is, and so then, of course, looking at the acquisition of Navistar that came through the heavy truck business, Scout, of course, is there, and it was like, wow, let's do it. And the idea that was loved was, I think what you see with a lot of startups, I think there's a lot of excitement around it. People are like, that's cool. It's something new. It's cool. Oh, I don't know if I trust them. Then if you look at the classic OEMs, you're like, I trust them. They're a little bit boring. And so I think if you can have this startup that has all the energy, has the clean slate, has a super good debt and everything else, where you're not taking on brownfield sites, you're not taking on all these other obligations.
Hazmat sites and all that.
With the backing. And the other thing where it's critical is on material costs. So a good example where startups struggle is you try and negotiate terms of trade for name the part.
Right.
And it's brutal because they're going to say, do we really believe your volumes? Do you really think you can get the cost? Well, we come in with the power of the group, and as opposed to buying X thousands of seats, you're buying tens of millions of seats. It's like, okay, here we go. So it gives us beautiful competitive advantage, a clean slate, and an idea that's well responded.
Well, let me ask you something that'll follow up, which is a bit of a challenge to this whole thing on EREVs, and I'll do one more EREV question. Then we
I'll
can
go with EREV.
Then we can get off the topic of
Yeah.
EREV. But all of that sounds great. The economies of scale, I get. Scout being part of this massive, VW operation where you can leverage that, but adding EREV back seems to be a complication, an unnecessary complication in that, right? Like the whole point of battery electric vehicles is that they are more efficient and the parts complexity goes way down, right? You don't have to, no valve spring, no pistons, no cams, no factories to build the pistons and cams, no need to test, to do the emissions, to do the certification and all that, right? Like, isn't the problem with the challenge of the startup is that, again, Tesla doesn't have to worry about any of that. Elon's famous for saying the best part is no part. And anytime you do a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, as you've always mentioned, like you're getting hybrids in particular, you're getting kind of the worst of both worlds, and you're adding
hybrid,
added complexity. So where does that narrative? First of all, is that narrative true at all? Is it, or does it? Are you saying that there's a? I hear what you're saying, that you're going after primarily the American or North American market in the full-size pickup truck and large SUV, and we obviously have a huge appetite like nowhere else in the world for these kinds of vehicles. But is that enough to offset the additional complexity of adding a motor?
The answer is 100%. Now, certainly I'm not going to naively sit here and say, yep, there's no more complexity to adding an engine, adding a gas tank. So of course there is. Yes, the answer is yes.
That was what my initial question was. Like, what are you got to be losing something.
So I'm not debating that. There's more complexity, of course.
Okay.
But of course, the flip side of that, did you open up a market? Did you bring more demand? Did you bring more volume into the equation from the answer is yes. Have you left yourself strategically open for the gateway of, let's say, okay, the market does go 100% EV. It does go 100%.
Yeah, you drop the EREV.
Well, boom, you drop it and away you go. So I think we put ourselves in a strategic position. Yes. The flip side is we took on more complexity, 100%, the homologation, all the things you're talking about, which wouldn't have been on the table, parts, logistics, distribution, all those kind of things that kick in without a doubt. But in my mind, you opened up the market by 40%. You put yourself in play in far more states, and you gave yourself a much, much stronger ramp up. And what do I mean by to say that? You could either ride it out and say, nope, we're going to stick to our guns, we're not going to change, 100% bev, sit there, and have a distinctly slower ramp up, waiting for the tide, waiting for momentum and everything else, or get right after it, put customers in on. So that decision, crystal clear to make. Did it have some compromise side of it in terms of more cost and more thing? Absolutely. Worth it? Totally.
Let me ask you
And
this.
then the other thing just that makes it work now, just getting back to the material cost, is if you can be smart with the chemistry, you can obviously, with smaller battery, with less chemistry engine in, you can start to get the material cost to land in a good place.
But I think also like Scout, because you're part of the group, you're sort of unique. Like it's not a big deal to source an engine. Whereas like if Rivian said, Rivian, Tesla, whatever, like they don't have engines. There's no engine part of that business.
Yeah.
So
No, and we know the engines. We know how to integrate the engines. We know how to we've homologated the engines. We know exactly what it means to have, let's say, hybrid software on the engine. So that's all manageable. But yeah, definitely it adds complexity. But to me, it expanded the market big time.
Let me ask you. This is hopefully not a question you're punching me in the face for, but you're
I would.
Where's this question going?
You're someone who is very uniquely qualified to answer this, given your long history of working for German car companies. I have a thesis that says that companies like VW Group and Mercedes, and actually Toyota too, for similar reasons, they don't want to go full BEV because in the home countries, the auto industry is more than industry. It is a lifeblood. And walking away from the piston factory, again, the cam, the valve spring, and IG Metall, the union, they cannot go the route of Tesla or Rivian or Lucid or any of these EV starts that are happening in China that are so simple because it puts so many people out of work. Is there any?
I don't think that's the case. I mean, the overall goal is, to have profitable and successful companies and 100% employ the people and the plants and everything else. So I don't see that as being a reason. I think if you look at the brands, and again, you can speak to the executives from Porsche to Audi, there's been aggressive on the EV front, full stop, both in China, both in Europe and here. So I don't see that. And it certainly didn't drive our decision. That's certainly without a doubt. What drove our decision is looking at the marketplace, looking at what's happening out there, and says, is there a smarter way to go about this? And this is definitely the way. But that theory, I don't.
You don't truck?
Buy it. I don't truck.
It
because
is.
I think. Oh, sorry. Just
please.
Because I think the flip side of that, and let's look at PowerCo as an example, with their building battery plants. As you know, 2 of them in Europe, 1 of them in Canada. So those are massive employment, massive operations, things like this. So there's also a lot of things that come along with electrification, as you know well, and then big business in terms of the housing, big business in terms of that. So I don't see that. The transition's certainly challenging, full stop.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say, because I
So I won't punch you in the face, but that theory I'm not buying.
Okay.
Try and find one where he will punch you.
Okay. Well, I got a couple. They're coming.
No, just because I remember I read somewhere it was in San Jose, California, it was I forget, 96% of new car registration or some crazy number, maybe it was 46%, whatever, huge, was EVs, whereas in, I can't remember if it was North Dakota or Oklahoma, but it was 1%. So it's how do you, if you're starting a new car company that's EV only, you can't reach the North Dakotas and if you only offer electrification. But I have this theory, and it goes like this. So, Tesla and Lucid, they wanted to make a real fast EV. So they made the motor spin faster. With the Taycan, Porsche's add a transmission, 2-speed transmission. Rivian, they said, we want to have really good motor control off-road with our electric motors, so we'll program it. Mercedes with the electric G, they said, add transmissions. So now the G-Wagon has 4 transmissions, and I'm wondering, again, conspiracy theory, but we're having a hard time. Rather than just spend the money on marketing, fine, just add an engine. This'll, we know engines. We're German, even though you're an American company, that's just my little theory.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I think America said electrification's cool. We're going along for this journey. It's not going as steep and as quick as either I'd planned or anticipated or whatever. So you've got to do something about it.
Right.
We've got Dynamite electrification platform. It's got Dynamite kit. It's going to do amazing. And it says, how do we build a smart bridge to get there? And this is a really smart bridge to get there. Okay. We keep the integrity of the car, keep the integrity of the platform, we keep the integrity of Scout, and it moves it from being a San Jose Venice car into being a thing. And I think that's awesome. And by the way, I'm really simple on this. Look at the reaction that we got from the brand, from the vehicle, and from the technology. And it's been huge. And even two jaded and cynical journalists sitting across can admit to that. This was, the reaction was huge.
Jaded,
it was huge.
cynical.
Exactly.
Jaded.
Exactly.
Not that cynical. In fact, let me ask you about that.
Snarky. We're snarkies in between. All right.
In terms of the excitement and the reservations, which we talked about, and the buzz, and you've confirmed it just a while ago here. We've generally assumed a plug-in hybrid should be priced between a hybrid and an EV. If the EREV has more range and more demand than the EV, does that mean it should be priced higher than the EV?
Yeah, good question, and I'm not going to answer it. But it is
Savvy veteran answer.
It is a good question. Look, we haven't gotten down to mix and everything else. These are things that we are looking at. But theoretical economic principle, to your point, would say that which has more demand should drive the higher pricing. There is something I've read something about that before. But let's see where we land on all that stuff. Look, let's be positive. We got an awesome platform that can move BEV, move electric. We've got good pricing. We've got material costs.
All right, so you're not announcing that, but like, is it still coming in 2027? Is this the time frame?
Yes, calendar year 27. Not talking model years at all, just calendar year.
So,
Yep.
okay, but if you said like, is that 2 years? We're in January.
We've said late 27 is what
Late
we've said.
27.
Late
Okay,
27.
okay.
We've been clear on that.
So
now,
it's
just
still ramping up.
to be fair to everyone, because I know journalists are going to get in conspiracy theories.
Yes,
It's like,
that's us.
We're
Yes,
building
yes.
a factory.
Yes.
We're engineering a car, so there's a lot of stuff to do. A lot of
Factories
stuff
take
to
time.
do, man.
Building a factory, a lot of stuff to do.
Consumer based, of course, is
Consumer-based.
coming, which is good.
And here's a question. This is the one I have to duck into because you might punch me in the face.
No,
The direct sales model. How's that
Yeah.
going?
I think it's going great. Yeah, I think it's going great.
How do some dealers in California and other states? If I ask them, how they?
Yeah, look, I think two things that should be clear. There's been obviously lots of press and lots of everything else. There's no lawsuits. There's no lawsuits on the table. What's on the table is a lot of press articles with let's say threats and things like that. I think it's super clear. One, we have a brand in Scout that does not have a dealer network and did not have a dealer network. We have a brand in Scout that is 100% startup, and that allows you to make decisions that startups can make. We're making decisions with our IT platform. We're making decisions on the frame. We made a decision on where to put the factory. We looked at 74 different sites, and we finally picked a fantastic site in Blythewood, South Carolina, and we're making a decision on how to sell the vehicles. And the decision we've made, is this anti-dealer? No. I've worked with dealers a long time, and they do an amazing job, and they sell 95%, 96%, whatever it is of the cars in America. It's a great job. But I do think about America, and I do think it believes in innovation. I think it believes in competition. It believes in price and transparency, all the technologies that we have. And let's let the consumer decide. The best field you have in America is the consumer field, and they make decisions based on what products they like, how they like to buy them, and how they like to do it. So, look, nothing is easy in life, but again, these are the decisions that we've made all along, and we made a decision on the platform, right? There was, at the time, we could have said, okay, let's take a group platform, let's carry it over, let's see if we can make a real Scout out of this thing. No, we went body on frame, and all the decisions that come with that, solid rear axle, on and on. Why do we do that? Our number one thing is we said, the world is going to look at us and say, these guys are going to put a sticker on some car and they're going to call it a Scout. This thing won't be credible. It won't be legit. And then we said, not happening.
When it was first announced, we were like, what's the big Volkswagen? The Atlas.
Rebadged.
They're going to do an Atlas. That's
Right.
what we all said. Like,
Right.
ooh, how are they going to make an Atlas into a Scout?
So big decision then. Then the other one was the factory, and then the third one is how we go about doing it. I don't have a who's better, who's worse, who's right, who's wrong. It's a business decision, and I think we can drive consumer love with going this way. And there's a lot that can be done with transparency and speed and technology. You guys know it, and that's what we want to do.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I'm definitely not punching you in the face on that one.
Okay. All right.
Did you find one? Ed?
All right. Well, let's. I think all right. This is great because this is now. Now we can go into the real softballs.
But I will say we interview a lot of CEOs. I like these decisive answers.
Okay. Yeah.
This is refreshing.
Hey, talk to man at the top.
No, I know. I'm saying we talk.
That's
to
the
a lot
only
of-
way in this job, man.
Well, other CEOs disagree.
So you have, again, in your background, you've worn many hats, including marketer. So I want to talk some about some of this let's get in the nitty gritty about how this car is going to like surprise and delight the end user. Our man Eric Tingwall, our testing director, went to CES and he got a really good download. He got a preview of the community UX, the user experience. Okay. He gave it high marks. This guy's we've been really focusing on software-defined vehicles and this and that.
By the way, another good example of being a startup, right? We can go out and do those kind of things. You know, I think a very good example is what you see now is cars are coming out of the factory. And it's like, who's the market for this thing? We were so hyper clear what we wanted to do, how we want to achieve, and then that's what designed the car. That's what set the platform. That's what set the UX. So it's good. But anyway, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No.
Yeah.
So I was going to offer you the chances to sort of summarize the community UX approach and how I'll just set you up and say, it's not all screen based. It's a mix of screens and physical buttons and dials. How did you get there? This is a pivot back.
Yeah.
This is
I think there's a few theories that I have and a few conspiracies. I think the first thing, and it sounds completely hokey, but it's true. The line we started with going way back was we wanted to build this connection machine. It's like, wow, that sounds pretty hokey. But it's what led to the things we're fighting for, like, let's get a bench seat so my dog or my boyfriend or my girlfriend gets right. Bench seat. And then even the tailgate. We fought forever over the tailgate. And believe me, there's much easier ways to execute the tailgate than we did. But it's like, no, man, Scout's got to have a tailgate. You got to drop that thing down. You got to, drink a beer, go to a tailgate with that thing.
What was the alternative to? This is for the pickup or for the?
I'm talking Traveler now.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
talking the SUV.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could have done it
right.
With the single hinge going across. It's easier to do it that way with particularly the spare tire in the back. And so our philosophy was America in general, social media, and all this promise and everything else didn't lead to this holy land of great connection. Actually, it led to discombobulation and disconnection.
That's right.
If we look at a lot of cars, and I think what sort of happened, at least in my philosophy, was, boy, these cars of the future are going to be great. Screens, software, AI, they're going to be so great that we don't even want you involved with it. Just kind of sit there and behave yourself. Don't get the screens dirty, by the way, and don't do this and just kind of get there. Everything's going to handle itself. And even in the vehicles themselves, it was, we're going to add a screen in the back and add a screen. So we don't want any of you connecting. Just deal with your screens and let's go nav around. And so totally, we went back to like old school Scout stuff, and it was like, you got to engage with the vehicle and build a connection machine. So once you set that as a premise, then you go to the UX and it's like, okay, Americans have not forgotten how to turn on a light switch or open a door handle. So like, let's put the switches back and be super linear with things. Because the thing we used is let's make sure this thing is a tool. And tools like hammers or screwdrivers or drills, you grab them, and if I never showed my son anything about a drill, you'd hand it to him and he would drill. And that's what we wanted to do. So that's what led to the switches, super clean. You've got your, most of your lockers and all of that are up here. Your accessories, we'll talk about that in a second here, and then the classic switch. So that was the first thing. And then once we got to the screen, we wanted to make it super simple, super iconic. The other thing, since it's a connection, is it's got a really neat thing where all three people can control the UX on the thing. So it's got cool little swipes. Let's say I'm doing the music on my side, but my wife wants it. Then you can swipe it over, and she can do the music on that side. You have to see it. It's kind of cool. So that was the thinking. Connect, switches, simple, and let the community do it, which if you're in the passenger or the center bench or that, you could also be using that screen. And actually, I think I'm glad he liked it because he was just sort of coming to life, and we really came to life just for CES, and it got a good reaction. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, I got to go back and give you kudos for the bench seat. I'm sold. Like one of my many.
By the way, in both of them too, pickup truck and the SUV.
And is that real quick? Is that the only front seat option? Or
no, you can either go bench or you can go classic seats. Yeah, buckets.
And just for people who are listening, because that was a great answer, and you covered a ton of ground on the decision making process. What people need to understand is, first of all, I'm a huge Land Cruiser nerd, and Land Cruiser went away from the split tailgate, and all the manufacturing executives will tell you there's a reason why. It's more expensive. You got to engineer 100%. You got to have two. You got to have a hinge on the top, a hinge on the bottom. Now you got to have a piece, and you got to have another piece. They got to come together. There has to be a weather seal. It's got to have to be weatherized.
Agreed.
Water that goes in this way.
But guess what? People love SUVs with tailgates.
With the tailgate that you can sit on. Right?
It's the coolest.
Yeah. And we had a ton of debate. Where do you do the cut line with the lights? It went on. It went on endlessly. But there's also like there's a handful of things you have to fight for
Yeah.
in a car because
Yeah.
those are the only things customers talk about. Another good one is the Cabana roof. I'll show you guys. It's like a super large fabric,
Yeah.
kind of French roof. You know, it's like an old
Yeah.
Duchauveau kind of
Yeah,
Fiat kind of
yeah,
roof.
yeah.
Super cool though. It's
Right.
big and it folds back and it's like it's
I-
awesome.
I was involved with a Scout that had that roof, a 61.
Cool,
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah.
But same for the reason bench seats are not even offered anymore in the front is because the crash testing, the manufacturer. First of all, you know, a lot of manufacturers, they all use the same suppliers. If nobody's building it,
Right, nobody builds it. Yeah,
you got to build it. You got to test it. You got to crash it. You got to make sure it works with all the different lovely sizes and shapes of Americans. Like, you know, it's very complicated. It's very expensive to offer this. So I'm curious. Let's get back to software though.
But the only thing, just on that, you're exactly right. Everything you say is exactly true. But again, this is what's led to this sort of watered downification. Sorry, it's of the car business, and it's like if you look at what Scout did well, they just built these cars that like people care about. They're a lot of fun, and like you're kind of stuck to your guns on things, and that's exactly what it is. And I want people to look at this car, and I do want people to look at it and be like, wow, these guys are a little crazy. Put a bench seat in this thing. Put a this thing's kind of nuts. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's the kind of car built. The thing's kind of nuts, but it's awesome. It's awesome, and that's the reaction we got. And I think people said this is being made by people who love cars, and not only just love the physical cars, but what they mean to society and what they mean to your neighbors and what they mean on the road and what it means when you talk about them. And I can guarantee you that's the reaction we're getting to them. People are like, oh, you guys did that? You guys did that? Cool. And, you know, I sure we'll get into it, but we should talk a little bit about the Scout community, but I'm sure you guys will go there when you can. Yeah.
But I want to just extend a little bit on the community UX. So one of our side hustles, along with covering EVs, we've been really trying to cover software-defined vehicles. And I know part of the group is Cariad, and that group, those guys have had a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges. How did that impact Scout? How did it impact? You mentioned that, you know, I think you might have landed the plane on community UX like right before CES. Like, did it impact the development? Who did community UX? Is it through Cariad? Is it a division within Scout? Like, how
No,
does that work?
so to be clear, the architecture that our vehicle will be using will be the joint venture architecture, which is fantastic, right?
That's the Rivian.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So it's the
which is great.
50-50 joint venture.
Which is great architecture.
Great architecture, and it gives us
Super
all
good,
the
yeah.
things we want for over-the-air updates.
And
it gives us
power,
all
yeah.
full shooting match. And then, of course, then the UX, 100%. We have a team in Northern California that designed it, and then that team will work directly with the joint venture team to implement it. And it's a combination of design, it's a combination of our engineering, and then a combination of the joint venture. So,
And this
but it
is-
was all done by Scout.
And this is where
The
I think
UX that you saw.
is confusing.
But the only thing is that UX that you saw is basically all pre-programmed, sitting in the trunk. That needs to be translated now into the real car, into the real thing, and that's all what's happening as we speak, basically.
I was just going to say, what's confusing for a lot of people is they hear, yeah, we have, you know, the Rivian chips, and that they just think, oh, you're just running like Rivian software with like a mask on it. But it's like, no, that's just like vehicle control. The screen, the community UX, that's Scout. That has nothing to do with Rivian. That's separate.
Exactly.
And that has nothing to do with the group. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
and that I think what a lot of people love about, and I say this as a Rivian owner, about Rivians and Teslas is that the software you see, as opposed to the software you don't see. The software you see is so good, and it's just so much
Exactly.
fun to own.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it's like your phone. It's like you're just getting new stuff with the updates, and
I
it just
agree.
works well.
And one of the critical things about being direct to consumer is you have to have the over-the-air updates. You have to have
Yes.
the ability. And by the way, it's exactly the thing. If you look at cars, and you guys already know this, it's not going to be about all the metal that you bent and turned around for model year improvements on and on. It's like software. The other thing, by the way, in the range extender, and I know you're going to completely go off the charts on it, but the upgradability of this thing is endless. You have a gas tank. Put a larger gas tank in, put a smaller gas tank in, add 100 miles, whatever it is. You have an engine. Let's put more output onto the engine, which can then generate more range or generate more power. You have chemistry upgrades. All right, let's use the newest chemistry. Let's use this. So the permeations that you can do with this are phenomenal. And you can build full-blown different characters
with
from the
the-
truck to the SUV and on and on. So in my mind, just to get back to the upgrades, that's where it's going to be happening. It's going to be happening there and in the software and everything else. Less on, we're going to upgrade the design and things like that. I think we've got an iconic design that's going to hold. It's going to hold
I was just
for a
going
long
to say,
time.
with the Terra, you have a big platform to do physical upgrades, to
wait.
add a bigger gas tank.
You're saying you're going to be able to not
Just
just add-
ideas.
not
Just ideas.
but you but I get adding a physical like add a bigger gas tank, but you can. Are you saying you can OTA? You could over the air update performance to the motor to the
No, two separate things. Two separate
Okay.
things. In terms of upgrading cars, software is
Got
one,
it.
and then you can do a lot with the range extender.
but that's
But there's
important.
no OTA, a bigger engine. Not that but when it comes,
Well, I
we'll
meant
talk
like,
about
but maybe like there's you could you would chip a car back in the day. You would overclock it. Let's say
Yeah.
you could theoretically maybe I don't know. That's what I was asking.
But no, it's interesting. I was just on the launch of the new Forerunner, and I was with the guys from Expedition Overland, and that's all they care about is range. That's their whole thing. And and they were talking. They're saying we've been disappointed with the Tacoma because it's a great truck to outfit, except for it's got a usable 17.5 gallon tank, and that for us it really causes problems. So and I'm thinking of how big the Terra is, and I think that surprised me when I saw it was the size of it.
Yeah, it's a full size. It's a full size truck.
You being Scout could you could put a big tank in that.
Yeah,
thing,
that thing can. Yeah, the Traver's a little tighter, but that one is.
Yeah, but you
tanks.
could put 2 tanks in
Yeah,
that thing.
exactly.
You could
Exactly.
put tanks in the bed.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly.
So that's cool.
Okay. The last thing on just it was very exciting, and I want to talk more about Rivian and that relationship within the group, but that seemed to be you're not using Cariad stuff at all. There's
No. No, we're on the
Interesting.
joint venture architecture. And then just as has been reported, as you guys have seen, Cariad is doing vehicles. They're doing a lot of what's called the E-Cubed 1.1. So that's sitting in a lot of Volkswagens, sitting in Audis, it's sitting in a lot of Scots. It's sitting on millions of vehicles. Don't want to undermine that. And then the generation that's on the joint venture architecture will be a Scout, will be a certain Audi, a certain Porsche, which I won't mention, and then, of course, the Rivian products. So they're sort of divided like that for now, and then let's see where it heads to. But we will be on the joint venture architecture, which for us is perfect, and I think it makes a lot of sense for the vehicle that we're offering, the time we're coming, and everything else. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's great. And
But I think there's, what people get confused on is the reason I keep using the term joint venture. There's Rivian, the hardware automotive company that we have no relationship to, and then there's their joint venture, which has a software, and that's
Yes,
where, of
and
course,
so
we're getting the
that's
architecture
a
for a vehicle and
chipset
doing all that stuff.
and vehicle
Zonal
control
architecture, and
logic.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we had RJ in here to talk about it. So, which opens the door. So we've asked you you had your CEO hat on, and then we made you put the nerd UX hat on. Now we're gonna ask you to put the marketing cloak, the cloak of
I
marketing.
put a little bit
on.
on with Connection Machine, a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's come back to because Jonny is a fervent Rivian
I'm an
enthusiast.
owner.
He's
I'm
an owner.
I bought it because I thought it's really good.
How
vehicle.
Yeah.
how do you? Let me just ask you how to
Differentiate.
differentiate Rivian from Scout.
Between Rivian, I think it's hyper clear. And look, I don't think it's about this is good and this is bad. I think first and foremost, just on the whole setup of the brand. If you look at it, they use this language right there, the Patagonia of whatever. Look, I think our brand is way more Levi's Carhartt than Patagonia.
Filson?
Right.
Do you know Filson?
Yeah, no, Filson. Filson's good. Filson's a cool
I thought-
brand.
this is hilarious because
Filson's a cool brand.
I actually had this question. I'm like, Rivian's Patagonia, Scout is. You just said Levi and Carhartt.
little Carhartt in there, yeah.
This is the kind of hipster Carhartt, though. Come on, really? Because this is gonna be. This is not Levi. Levi's.
Well, Levi's means something different in Nebraska.
Levi's are
Yeah.
sold in Walmart and Costco.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
not. We're not talking that level of entry point.
Yeah, but I think
Filson, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah, but I
USA?
think Levi's, if we're honest, they navigate everything, which I think is the magic of Levi's. You can wear them on a work site, you can wear them to Nobu up in Malibu, and it's Levi's. No one's going to say, and that's why I think Scout works. Scout's going to be able to translate into 50 states, in the communities. That's why I think it's going to work. It's going to be a cool as heck vehicle in Malibu. And by the way, you see $200,000 resto mod sitting there. You'll see Scout sitting there. It's going to work on a farm in Iowa, and it's going to work. So that's what I think the magic is. The other thing is the products are inherently different. I know it says, wow, they look alike, they look alike. No, they're not. Let's just go to the truck just for a fire. We went full body on frame, solid rear axle,
And much bigger.
separate bed, a size up in size of both of them. So we went just different philosophical vehicles. So I think the separation is going to make itself quite clear when you see them, when you interact with them, and then how the brand positions themselves. And again, not one is right or wrong, but I think we've got a clear space there. I think also where that space comes from is our heritage, right? We're not completely starting from one, let's come up with some name and let's have someone create the name for us and let's pay an agency to give us that name and, you know, let's put the word together. And no, we have something, we have our heritage and we're playing to it. So I think we have that. And look, the balance we always use, I think if we do our jobs right, from a brand position, we've always used this heritage meets ingenuity. And I think if you look at American brands, ones that you love, they generally do that really well. And the two icons of heritage and ingenuity in my mind are Levi's and Apple, right? If you put them in that kind of place. And I think if you look at the Scout, it's got tons of heritage that we mentioned, from using the switchgear to the bench seats to the solid rear axle, but then it's got mountains of ingenuity. How we execute the solid rear axle, 1,000 pound-feet of torque coming off of that, the software, the zonal updates, and all of that. So I think it's this perfect balance, which, by the way, I think is exactly what Americans are looking for now. You got this blend of nostalgia and trustability and switch gears and cool, but we also don't want to go to America and say it's 1972 and let's forget the technology and everything that's happened. And that balance is what we're seeing, and that's why we're having a good reaction. So I think those two brands are quite distinct.
Man, you're good.
No, but
That was really.
but it's true. That's why
I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying you're good. Let me ask you this: you're launching two, and I know you're not going to get into that, but like, is the brand big enough to support other models? In other words, you're launching like a very large, and I keep saying this because it's the size of an F-150 from what I can
lane to
tell.
F-150, almost to the.
So that's big.
Yeah.
No, Americans like that. That's great.
Yeah.
And you're launching a pretty large SUV. Can you go smaller? In other words, like, you know, we had RJ out from Rivian on, and he said, you know, the problem with the EV market is everything is a Model Y clone. But you know, he's about to launch one. The R2 is that size, and then smaller. The Scout, can you go smaller? Also, you know, I remember very fondly the Travelall. You know, big SUV. Americans love big SUVs. You know, we're the suburban country.
So look, you guys know a body-on-frame platform such as this, and I think you can look at American products, and you can probably figure out what our third product could quite easily be. There's a third one that fits right there. It would be off of the SUV. It may be able to hold a few more people. Easy, right there in the thing. So that would be the third. And then the question on going smaller, it's, you know, can the brand hold it? Can the brand hold that? And I think 100%.
Yeah.
But the critical thing to look at is, honestly, we're not focused on that, because the dangerous game you play there is, maybe we're not succeeding here. Maybe we're not making money here. It's a classic automotive game. It's like, well, let's go find the next thing.
Right.
The reason we picked this brand, the reason we picked this segment, this is where the money is, this is where the profit is. We have one platform, two hats on the platform. We kept up to the B pillar, super similar, because that's what you want to do. That allows you to get that other side of complexity down and get this thing going. So this is where the action is. There's no lack of volume here. There's no lack of profit opportunity here. So I don't want to be one of these brands that's like, we need 18. Like, we don't. I think we need a third one for sure. And then we can sort of take the dance from there.
And you saw it firsthand at Audi, and you know, Mercedes. Ola Klein has spoken about this a lot. It's like we went two down market. We just did. You know, with the you know, whatever the A class and even like the A3s. Like it just, you know, you really need Audi price like a Kia. Like you know, it's a stretch.
Yeah,
it's a stretch.
Exactly. I agree. And you know, and look, with volume, of course, good things happen. But I think the automotive business got too focused on that, and by focus on just running for volume, you sort of lost your soul a little bit.
And real quick, like, you know, as you keep mentioning, like, profits are on premium vehicles. Like, you know, okay, if you score and you have a real volume winner, you can make profits that way. But if you have a volume car that doesn't sell well, then you
get all a set of headaches.
Yeah,
exactly. But you're right. I mean, look, you know, some of the vehicles in these segments, they're doing 800,000, 1.2 million. I mean, they're doing some big volumes off and if you put the platforms together, which includes the brands and all of it, you get into 1.5s pretty quickly. And off a platform, that's
great.
That's real math.
That's gravy. Yeah.
We wanted to be crazy concentrated. We built the factory. The factory's capable of making 200,000 Scouts. If we really triple shift and push it, you can go a little bit higher. That's how we built our business case. That's how we built the returns. If it grows, it can grow, we can grow, but I don't want to be looking to the growth. I want to be looking to like make this work and succeed like now. And I think that's what happens when the Pilgrims came to America. It wasn't like, hey, where you want to go to Asia? You want to go? So I was like, no, man, let's just get across this ocean, land there, and let's make this thing work. And that's exactly what we're doing.
For the listener, I think you heard more than two things there, but I think the key message is they're not going to try to take this car to take these vehicles, to Asia, to China. That's I think a lot of, like, my question was like, you guys are crazy. Like, why would you start with the truck and the SUV? But you've answered that very elegantly, very coherently. But I also want to make sure the listener knows you guys are nuts, right? That like entering the full-size pickup truck market that is not a task to be taken lightly. Like, there are several major car companies that have tried and failed to enter the full-size pickup truck market and the big SUV market, and the battlefield is littered with these over time. Like, this is not like a new thing that people have tried, because for a lot of the reasons you stated, Ford F-Series has been the number one selling pickup truck in America, number one selling vehicle in America for 47 plus years.
Unless GM would actually combine GMC and Chevy
Exactly.
sales. I mean, that sold them for 47 years.
But
I get where you're going with the question, so keep going.
Yeah, that's the target that you've described. And so but I'm giving you like hats off for doing this and the way you're doing it, which is to try to do this as an American brand, revive an American brand, do the manufacturing in America, and build off of our, frankly, our love and addiction to giant-sized 4x4, very capable trucks and SUVs. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think the other is look, exactly right. So no one's naive on the ambition, the magnitude of the task, the difficulty.
You're aware Nissan
no debate.
exists.
Yeah.
You know about Nissan.
Yeah. And we're fully aware that it doesn't take a rocket science to say that's where the profit pool is in America, and wouldn't be nice to make money in those profit pools. Yeah, totally good. A lot of people run those analogies. But look, I think we've made the right steps so far, and all those things that you mentioned are not inevitable. There's giants get knocked down every day. Right. How to use it. But the other thing I think is the philosophical thing of also look at these segments in general. I'm talking big picture. Americans are getting outdoors more like crazy. Every day there's another Defender-esque, Toyota Land Cruiser-esque type of rugged-esque type of vehicle. The segments are booming. Yeah. Americans are moving out of cities and moving into smaller places where these vehicles are smaller cities. These vehicles are coming alive. So the mega trends in America for these types of vehicles are, and these types of brands are there. And the thing we didn't do, it's like, oh, here's just a model off of a brand that's doing a whole bunch of other things. It's like a whole brand dedicated to doing this. From the factory to how it's optimized, to the platform, to everything we're doing with the brand, to the retail, and so I think that's why this thing's, it's designed to win, but no one's naive to the challenge. We didn't wake up to. That I promise you.
And to underline the point about, people are hungry for this, that 4Runner, 9 trims. There's 9 trims on a 4Runner. Like, remember when there was
on top of
trim?
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Just look at the number of SUVs that Toyota has.
Oh, you could the number of SUVs.
You have a Land Cruiser that's
that's there. It's actually like it's
and they're all good. They're all awesome doing their thing.
Hey,
so
I'm not nothing bad about it. I'm just saying, like, people are hungry, so it does make a lot of sense. Okay. And again, as we said from the outset, like, if you look at the U.S., it's so weird because you have, I don't know, what full-size trucks are like 3-4 million vehicles a year, added all up, and no one can crack it, right? I mean, it's this weird thing. It's a big three. Toyota maybe a little bit, but a little bit.
They're getting there.
You're getting there.
Time. Tacoma and smaller size for sure. Sure.
Yeah, they've been there. And, but like, it's just weird. Like, if you want to make money in America, you kind of got to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
Okay, we are way over time, but I want to wrap up here with some bigger picture questions. So, Jonny, if you don't have anything, I'm going to go. All right, let's go.
Wait, this was a small ball interview?
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought this was big picture.
Yes.
Just a couple because it's topical. When you were still before the announcement of Scout, you were leading Volkswagen in 2016. When this guy Trump came into office, okay? And then you said 40 years, and then you took the job, and
Yeah,
now
technically, I was at Audi in
Audi, sorry.
2016.
Yeah.
Okay,
I remember it very well. Yeah.
Okay. But you're a different place.
Yeah.
And now you're here, and now this guy is in office. Has this changed anything for you and your approach to the business? That EV mandate's going away. Oh, there's going to be tariffs. Like, how do you see the world now?
Yeah. Look, I think, first and foremost, being at Audi in the last, as you remember, there was going to be a lot of Section 200 tariffs, anything coming from Europe, and it was a lot of, so look, you can't run a business on speculation and speculation and speculation. You can run a business on what's out there. But if I look at big picture, what is exactly happening in the world? Geopolitics, certainly happening. Let's say regionalization, certainly happening. And certainly the Trump administration is super clear. We want to make things again in America. We want to do things again in America. And if you're doing things in America, we're all in. We're all on board. We know this quite well from the administration in South Carolina. So to me, you almost couldn't design a better company for exactly what everyone's universally looking to do right now. 4,000 jobs in South Carolina, engineering a vehicle in Detroit, 85% of the supply chain coming from the region, innovating and doing things in America like the range extender, like the software and everything else. So actually, I think Scout is almost custom designed for this American moment and this American. And by the way, I would say that would be true on the other side as well, whether it's Republicans or Democrats in. What politicians are going to say, wow, that's a terrible idea. You're building a factory in America. You're employing Americans.
Right.
By the way, I don't want to go on my jobs kick, but if you look at the preponderance of jobs, they're here today, gone tomorrow jobs, next to no medical care benefits, next to no child care. So these are going to be, no joke, 21st century jobs, right? You're being trained for something. You're being trained to have something in the future. You're getting paid well. So I think what we're doing is spot on for America. And I know this is right because I've traveled around to Fort Wayne. I've traveled to California. I've traveled to South Carolina. I've traveled all over America. And the instant you say we're bringing back this iconic brand, every American says, that's cool. That's awesome. So then you get down to, you say, the policies and what comes of the money or what comes of the tax credits. Look, we didn't build it on the $7,500 consumer tax credit. Don't get me wrong. Would I like to have it? It would be fantastic.
Sure.
Is my entire company going to live and breathe off it? No, right? It was always going to be off the table in 2032, so whoever knew it wasn't going to be there. But to me, it's like getting an airplane off the ground. A little more runway would certainly be helpful, no debate. I think the other incentives, let's see what happens, but most of them are structured on industrialization, on the battery, right? You have them for the battery cell, and then you have them for the battery pack. Let's see what comes of them, but I think those are doing what they're supposed to be doing, employing Americans to build things. So let's see what happens. But the core of what Scout is doing is evergreen in America, in my mind. No debate about that.
Okay.
No one's going to say, oh, bad idea, employing Americans.
Does
Building a factory,
Does
bad
Elon
idea.
Musk's proximity to Trump or in the administration give you any kind of pause?
How so?
Well, it runs Tesla, right?
You might say like other EV companies are un-American. Who knows?
Oh.
Something like that.
No, no, it doesn't give me any pause. Nor have I given it a ton of thought to give you the
Fair.
the honest answer.
Good answer. So that shows you which answers. Yeah, exactly. Reinforces what you said.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got. It was all softball, apparently. Like I didn't ask any hard questions. So
God, my beautiful face is still all assembled here now.
I apologize to the listeners. I didn't challenge Scott Keogh at all. Johnny, I mean,
No, I mean, good luck. Like,
Big time.
I'm excited.
We
and
need it.
I'd love to actually. I don't know if you'd be the person, but I'd love to like sit down and talk to someone about like all the off-road decisions, because it's funny. Like, again, I own this Rivian, and I got a questionnaire from the company like, "Why'd you buy it?" And I just kept saying off-roadability is number one.
If you're next time you're in Detroit and Novi, let me know, and we can.
I
we'd
don't
love
want
to deep dive it, man.
I want to put that
Let's
person
go
in
deep.
that seat.
Oh,
and like,
easy, easy.
Yeah.
We got like tons of them.
Yeah, but I was
Yeah.
just I talked to people at Rivian. I said,
Yeah.
"Man, what were the results?" And they're like, "You were number 9 of 9. Like nobody bought these for off-roadability." And I was like, "But they're really good." And, So anyway, I'm just because I've been like, "Oh, you can put a winch on these Scouts." Like, oh,
Exactly right.
Like lockers
and a plow.
Yeah.
And even a hail-based bike. We're
yeah.
even doing that. So we're doing like
Portal axles?
all the cool
You
simple
could,
stuff.
sure.
You could,
Yeah.
not, but
you can do that on any vehicle.
Yeah.
But no, but it's just like it's like because on a Rivian, and again they're very range sensitive. there's no winch and there's nowhere to put a winch, and
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, interesting. You could put a
Actually,
winch.
another thing you didn't get into, but we'll
Yeah.
get into is 100% day one massive accessory portfolio. Most electric vehicles like, don't touch it. We have
Yes,
the thing
you-
perfect.
you have
So all
aux
that's there.
switches.
All that exactly.
Yeah, that which I'd
Exactly.
love to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll get. I'll come
Okay.
back, or someone will come back.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
gotta hit this before.
Yeah, there you go.
Inevitable. All right.
Yes.
Cool.
Scott Keogh's
Keogh.
return is inevitable.
Nice.
Ding.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the
Thanks,
time
guys.
with us.
Total pleasure, man.
This was
Blast.
good, and we want to check in right when the things launch, if not earlier.
Let's do it earlier. That's
Okay.
cool. Let's do this
Awesome.
stuff. All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.